Hello and welcome to a new episode of Africa Today, where we shed the light on the Black continent. But first we go to South Sudan, where the rebels there kidnapped 8 locals from a U.S. charity, and they are demanding for a ransom. And to know more about this, in the following report. South Sudanese rebels have kidnapped 8 locals working for a U.S. charity and are demanding aid deliveries a ransom, as food in the famine-hit nations looks increasingly likely to become a weapon of war. The 8 workers were taken from a village near Mayandit, about 420 kilometers northeast of the capital of Juba. U.S. military spokesman said that the rebels attacked and abducted 8 local staff from the Samaritan purse, and they being held to ransom. They have demanded that the organization takes aid to them. No one at the charity was available for comment. Meanwhile, 2 Indian employees of the Ministry of Petroleum were kidnapped on March 8 in the northeast Maiwat state. Also in the north, clashes between the army and rebels killed at least 23 people and injured 56, with the insurgent attacking government positions, looting and setting fire to houses in the oil-rich Bay Estate. Welcome back. And South Africa and Nigeria has made an early warning warning system to track and deter the xenophobic against the Nigerian migrants, and we have more details in the following report. South Africa and Nigeria resolved to establish an early warning system in response to the xenophobic attacks and to strengthen relations between the 2 nations. South Africa's international relations minister and her Nigerian counterpart had held a bilateral meeting on Monday. This follows a wave of xenophobic violence in the SA in February. The meeting was attended by several officials from both countries, including Nigeria's Interior Minister and South Africa's Home Affairs Minister. 10 houses were torched in the Rosentville by angry residents who claimed their homes were being used by Nigerians for drug dealing and prostitution. Several parochial homes were raided by community members of similar reasons. Nigeria's government knew the violence aimed at Nigerian nationals in the SA was not state-sponsored. The vast majority of Nigerian citizens in the SA contributed toward creating a dynamic SA and felt at home in the country. SA and Nigeria's vision for the early warning mechanism will be aimed at preventing future attacks and creating steps for both governments to respond quickly to similar attacks. In SA, the unit would include the Nigerian Union of SA, while in Nigeria an invitation would be extended to South African business community for a representative to join the project. And moving to the Ethiopian capital, Addis Ababa, where the death toll from a landslide at the rubbish dam there had reached 48. 32 women were among the dead within the while dozens of injured are receiving medical treatment at a neighboring hospital. The Ethiopian government sent its condolences and representatives who will attend the funeral of the dead later on Monday. The collapse occurred pulling down about 30 houses belonging to people living on the landfill in Koshi. And moving to Kenya, where the Kenyan government has signed a deal with one of the 2 union-represented striking university lecturer, bringing the government closer to ending an embarrassing standoff ahead of the elections in August. And we have more in the following report. The Kenyan government has struck a deal with one of 2 unions representing striking university lecturers, bringing the government closer to ending an embarrassing standoff ahead of elections in August. Second union will continue the strike, which has shut down classes in many public universities since January. Doctors in public hospitals have also been on strike since December. The strikes come amid fierce criticism of the government of President Uhuru Kenyatta, who is seeking re-election in August when the East African nations hold presidential and parliamentary elections. Lawmakers are investing allegations that tens of millions of dollars have gone missing from the Kenya's Ministry of Health and National Youth Services. Doctors and university lecturers say if the government cracked down on corruption, there would be more money to pay public servants. The University Academic Staff Union and the Kenya University Staff Union went on strike in January. The Staff Union, which has members in 33 universities, has demanded a 400% pay rise. It has now agreed to 17.5% increase in basic pay and 3.9% increase in housing allowance. Welcome back, and we've reached the final piece of news where a number of photos are making the rounds, where the photos show some Nigerian soldiers with extraordinary powers showing off their skills. The Ever, whose location was undisclosed, showed the soldiers doing stunts, one of which was the photo of the patrol Hilux truck being driven over the arm of a soldier. Another photo showed a soldier dragging a Hilux with his teeth. And now we are going to move to Nigeria, where we are going to tackle the security situation there. And to know more about this, we are joined over the phone by Mr. Ali Al-Qurai'i, a political analyst. Hello, Dr. Ali.
Hi there. How are you?
How are you, sir? Sir, how do you estimate the security situation in Nigeria now?
Well, you have to differentiate between the north and the south of Nigeria. The north, because of Boko Haram, is facing continuous problems because of the incursions of Boko Haram in the daily life of the population, whereas the south does not see this. It doesn't happen frequently, unless if we talk about the Niger Delta, where the oil is being pumped out. The population there is restless because they feel that they don't share the wealth of this region. But the big problem is the north. Security-wise, is trying to use force to achieve the results expected, which is stability in the north. But unfortunately, using force alone is not enough, because the north, and especially the northeast of Nigeria, bordering the Niger and Chad and the Sahel region, is facing this problem for a long time now, a few years. And I see that nothing concrete has happened in terms of the betterment of the daily life of the population is happening there. So unless we find a solution to this very acute problem, using the force alone is not enough.
Sir, how far the instability in Nigeria could affect the economy?
For sure it will, because people are afraid to go to work. The farmers, they are afraid to go to cultivate their fields. The unemployment is soaring. The production of the food ingredients is not enough. The cattle raising, which the main activity of the population in the north, is also being affected, because what compounds the problem is the drought that is taking place in this area. So you have the problem with the Boko Haram, and on the other side, the droughts. Mm-hmm. So unless there is a concrete plan of action that is being executed thoroughly in order to improve the economic situation in this area, the problem will get worse and worse. So the government has to find a way to set up this plan, realistic plan, and try to execute it.
Okay, now South Africa and Nigeria has agreed on a deal in order to make an early warning, in order to track
an early what?
South Africa and Nigeria had agreed on making an early warning to track and deter the xenophobic attacks on the Nigerian migrants. How do you see such an act by both countries?
You know, in South Africa, the problem is the people there, they think that the migrant people living in South Africa and working there are taking their jobs from them, away from them. And that's why from time to time you have problems with the immigrants being attacked by the local population. And every time the police has to intervene and set some conditions in order to achieve peace in the area. But it doesn't last for long. It is happening again and again. Because they believe, the population, I mean, South African population, they believe firmly that those people are snatching away jobs that should have been given to them. So any accord between Nigeria, which has a relatively large population working there, as well as people from Zimbabwe. So if there is an accord to try to stamp this, how do I say, aggression against the immigrants, is welcome. How they're going to do it, it's up to them to sit together and work it out.
And how do you see the attacks on the Nigerian migrants can affect the relations between both countries?
Because if it happens so frequently, it will have some repercussions on Nigeria. Because, you know, those are people from Nigeria working abroad. If they are being attacked all the time, then maybe relations will be strained. And we don't want this to happen in Africa because you have enough conflicts and problems. But I think that what they have achieved so far by setting this negotiations and the resulting accord that has been achieved is a good step forward. Because otherwise it will be repeated again and again. And finally, the relations between the two countries could be affected in the future, negatively.
Sir, we found that the Nigerian President, Muhammadu Buhari, has sent a letter to the Parliament saying that he is returning back to work after having a scar health. So how do you see the political situation in Nigeria so far?
The political situation, the Nigerians believed at the beginning that once Buhari will be elected, he will implement a very harsh policy against, you know, theft and corruption and all this. The President Buhari tried to do something about it, but unfortunately it's not enough. And the resulting impact on the population is very negative, not only from the south, which is mainly Christian, but also among the population in the north, the Muslim community. They want to see results. And the guy is trying very hard, and he did it once before. That's why he was re-elected, you know, about maybe 15 years ago, after he quit the army. He was in charge as, I believe, president at the time, and he achieved at the time good results. So they thought maybe this should be repeated again this time. But circumstances are different, time has changed, and the methods being used maybe they are not appropriate to the conditions prevailing today.
Sir, of course, one of the main problems also facing the Black continent, and of course in Nigeria, is the Shabab militant groups. How do you see the presence of this terrorist group could affect, of course, the already deteriorating situation in Nigeria?
No, I don't think there is a direct link, because Al-Shabaab are, you know, on the eastern side of the continent, and Nigeria are mainly in the west. What I fear is the Boko Haram influence, not Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab are influential, you know, in the east, which means probably Ethiopia, Djibouti, Somalia, the northern part of Somalia. Yes, if you talk about Al-Shabaab in the east, they are a big threat to the stability of the area. And we hear every day there are attacks, there are bombs being put and exploding, and even cars that explode and kill tens of victims, Somalis. So there is a link, yes, between Al-Shabaab and stability, either political or economic, in the East, yes.
There is no big difference between Al-Shabaab and Boko Haram because both are making the same, or they have the same aim, which is terrorism. So these groups are just names in the black continent. How far is the situation in Nigeria affecting neighboring countries, sir?
Oh, yes, it affects differently because Nigeria has borders, as I said, with Niger, with the Cameroon, the northern part of Cameroon, and the Boko Haram militias, they move freely from the north of Cameroon to the east, northeast of Nigeria, to Niger, Chad, and the region of the Lake of Chad. And they are there. And their headquarters are located in the forest near Maiduguri in the northeast. And I think the army was successful in dislodging them from this area, but they are still there. And they get recruitments from the local population, which are grumbling all the time against Buhari, because, as I said before, he did not accomplish what he promised. It is affecting, yes, all the neighbors. And you see that in Chad, security is very tight, as well as in Niger, as well as the north part of Cameroon. They have now patrols between the north of Cameroon and Nigeria jointly in order to slow down the attacks. I'm not saying to eradicate, it will take some time, but to slow down the movement of Boko Haram in terms of attacks in this area.
Sir, what are the measures so far could be in order to put Nigeria back on track politically and economically?
Now, the main thing in Nigeria, it's up to them how to solve the problem. They have to have peace. They have to pacify the population at large, especially in the north, in order to have enough economic activity to feed the population in Nigeria. So number one is to find a way to find a solution, durable solution, to the problem with Boko Haram. They have to sit down together and discuss it and see what will happen. It's a matter of time, but I'm sure that if they sit together and discuss it with honesty, they will reach a compromise.
Sir, we have the African Union, which is an official organization or official union in order to help the African states with the problem, but from the African Union is only statements and meetings, but we don't see something official on the ground. Why is that, sir?
I don't think they have all the means to do everything they want to. They have to step in and try to find solutions on the economic front by pumping, lending money to the local government. You know, what happened in Nigeria is the decline also of the selling price of oil dramatically. So the budget was affected in other areas as well. So the African unity, the African Union, I mean, must find a way to have a military force that should intervene in places where there is a conflict. We don't have to rely all the time on France or England or the US. It has to be done from the interior of the continent, which is represented by the African Union. So we have to find a way to boost the means that could be implemented within the African Union in order to have a swift action whenever is needed, and the intervention of the military forces that I'm proposing, I'm sure they're thinking about it, to intervene quickly in order to find a solution at the early stages before it spreads everywhere.
Sir, will we see that one day the neighboring countries of Nigeria will have a say in what's going on in Nigeria and they are willing to interfere?
I didn't hear the last word. Say it again.
Will the neighboring countries of Nigeria one day will interfere in Nigeria's case?
The population of Nigeria, you mean?
No, I mean the neighboring countries of Nigeria will interfere in Nigeria's case in order to solve the problems?
I think that they can do that, but in coordination with Nigeria. They must have a joint force that should be used on both sides of the border or the other borders. Because the Boko Haram members, they move freely. If they are attacked in Nigeria, they move into Niger. If they are attacked in Niger, they move to North Cameroon. So it must be a concerted action from all neighboring countries in order to control the situation.
And what do you expect, sir, will happen in Nigeria?
Well, the connection.
What do you expect will happen in Nigeria?
Say it again, please.
What do you expect will happen in Nigeria?
I expect, okay. In Nigeria, I think that, yes, they will find a solution, but I don't know, is Mr. Buhari will be in power for 1 year or 2 years, I don't know. If he's staying for 2 years, he should start immediately by setting the plan and coordinating his efforts militarily and exchanging the how do you say that, the information from the Boko Haram movement to other countries should be distributed to those countries in order to have a joint action against the Boko Haram. So if he has enough time and he starts now, it should get some results. But if he has only 1 year to stay in power and there will be a re-election in 2 years' time, I don't think he will have enough time to do something about it.
Well, Dr. Ali Al-Kurai, political analyst, thank you very much for joining us and welcome once again to Africa Today. And
thank you very much.
By this, we come to the end of our episode. I'm Dina Mamdouh. Thank you for